Sports presents the NCAA Basketball Championship Selection Show, sponsored by Pizza Hut, who reminds you that any time's a great time to stop and smell the pizza.
Hi, everybody. March Madness is in the air. I'm Jim Nance, along with Bill Raftery, Billy Packer. You ready, guys, to get it started?
Let's go.
Waste no time. Let's get out to Kansas City. James Brown with the announcement. JB, take it away.
All right, Jimmy, thank you very much, and we will waste no time cutting right to the chase for the 64-team field for this year's tournament. And let's start with the #1 seeds in the 4 regions. All right, in the East, no surprise there, North Carolina, the top seed. The last time they were #1, they went all the way to the championship game and won it in '82. In the Midwest, it's Indiana, masterful job by Bobby Knight and company. Rick Pitino's Kentucky Wildcats, the #1 seed in the Southeast, and Michigan, playing arguably the toughest schedule in the country. They are #1 in the West. Okay, let's take a look in the East first. These are Thursday, Saturday games in Winston-Salem. #1 ranked North Carolina, as we mentioned, they will be taking on the 16th seed there, East Carolina. The Pirates, first team since Montana State in '86 to come into the tournament with a losing record. The 8th seed, Rhode Island. Congratulations to Al Skinner, first appearance since '88. They will take on Purdue and their sensational sophomore, Glenn Robinson. Brian Mahoney's sensational job at St. John's, 5th seed. He's the Big East Coach of the Year. St. John's will meet Texas Tech. James Dickey, the head coach there, second-year coach, magnificent job. Arkansas will hold down the 4th seed in the East, and the Razorbacks of Nolan Richardson will take on Holy Cross. George Blaney in his 21st season at his alma mater. Now, these games are Friday, Sunday games in Syracuse in the East. The #6 seed, Virginia. Jeff Jones, well, I tell you, they started off 11-0, finished 8-9, but they're in the big dance. They will be taking on Manhattan, the Jaspers' first appearance since 1958, the same year the head coach Fran Fraschilla was born. Happy birthday. #3 seed goes to Massachusetts. John Calipari went back to his old coaching style. They're in the NCAAs, taking on the team from the Ivy League's 14th-seeded Pennsylvania, undefeated in Ivy League play. The #7 seed, New Mexico State. Swift, Sam Crawford, the man there, as they will play Nebraska, the #10 seed. All right, the #2 seed, Cincinnati, synonymous with defense there. #15, Coppin State. Bang Mitchell, the head coach there, they were undefeated in MEAC play. Now to the Midwest. These are Thursday, Saturday games in Chicago. The #6 seed, the California Golden Bears, under interim coach Todd Bozen, went 9-1 since the firing of Lou Campanelli. They will play the LSU Fighting Tigers. Dale Brown's team did it on the strength of postseason play. The Duke Blue Devils hold down a #3 seed in the Midwest. Mike Krzyzewski's team will take on the 14th seed, Southern Illinois, first appearance since 1977. The BYU Cougars hold down the #7 seed. They will play 10th seeded SMU. John Shoemate, remarkable turnaround job for the Mustangs. #2 seed, the Kansas Jayhawks, stumbled a bit in postseason play, but Roy Williams' team is in, and the Kansas Jayhawks will play Ball State, the Cardinals' third appearance in the last 5 years. And Friday, Sunday location in Indianapolis, of course, the #1 ranked Indiana Hoosiers, Bob Knight's team, maybe without Alan Henderson, will take on the 16th seed, Wright State. Just their 6th season in Division I play. They won the Division II championship back in '83. #8 seed, New Orleans, the Privateers, have a senior by the name of Irvin Johnson. Don't call him Magic, but he can play. The #9 seed, Xavier of Ohio, out of the MCC, 7th appearance in the last 8 years for Pete Gillen. The #5 seed is Oklahoma State, coached by the master, Eddie Sutton. They are in the tournament. Will take on Marquette, Kevin O'Neill. Super job there, first appearance since 1983. Denny Crum, the old hand, back in the tournament again, 17 appearances and 2 national championships, and the Cardinals will take on Delaware Fighting Blue Hens, second consecutive appearance for the Delaware Blue Hens. All right, now that's half the field, 32 teams, 32 more to go, and we'll bring you up to date with the Southeast and the West for the 64-team field right after these messages. The field for this year's NCAA tournament. All right, the #6 seed, these are Thursday, Saturday games in Orlando. The 6th seed, Kansas State, had a strong postseason appearance here. 5th time in the tournament in the last 7 years. They will take on Perry Clark's Tulane Green Wave. Stumbled down the stretch, but they're in nonetheless. The number 3 seed, Florida State Seminoles, led by the trio of Sam Cassell, Charlie Ward, and Bob Sir, will host the 14th seed Evansville Aces, Jim Cruz, a Bob Knight disciple there. The 7th seed, Western Kentucky, Ralph Willard has the Hilltoppers in. They were the Sun Belt Conference tournament champions, and they will play the 10th seeded Memphis State Tigers, led by do-everything player Anthony Penny Hardaway. The number 2 seed, Seton Hall, on a roll coming into the tournament, won their last 11 games, including the Big East Championship today. They will play the 15th seed Tennessee State Tigers. Hats off to Frankie Allen, his second year there. Took a team that was 4-24 last year. They're 19-9. All right, these games are Friday, Sunday in Nashville, the other half of the Southeast. Number 1 ranked Kentucky, the number 1 seed there, that is. They will take the 16th seed Rider Bronx, making their first appearance since 1984. Utah holds down the 8th seed, Rick Majerus, the big man, doing a big job there. The 9th seed Pittsburgh Pirates are in the tournament strong schedule from the Big East. The 5th seed, Wake Forest, the Demon Deacons, led by All-American forward Rodney Rogers, will play the 12th seeded Tennessee Chattanooga Moccasins. Mac McCarthy, the coach there, first appearance since 1988. The 4th seed, the Iowa Hawkeyes, who have overcome all kinds of adversity this year. Tom Davis has his team in there for the 8th time in the last 9 years, will take on Northeast Louisiana. All right, now let's move on to Salt Lake City. These are Thursday, Saturday games in the West region. Finally, the 6th seed, the Fighting Illini of Illinois, Lou Henson, 10th appearance for a Lou's due there. The 11th seed, Long Beach State, strong postseason play, quality wins over then number 1 ranked Kansas back in Lawrence, Kansas, showed everyone they are for real. The 3rd seed, the Vanderbilt Commodores. Eddie Fogler has Billy McCaffrey playing for him, and they're doing an outstanding job. The 14th seed, they will play Boise State, the Broncos, out of the Big Sky. The 7th seed, Temple Owls. Now, a lot of argument as to whether or not Temple or Michigan had the tougher schedule. You take your pick. John Chaney's team is in. They will play the 10th seeded Missouri Tigers. What a weekend here in Kansas City for Norm Stewart. They knocked off Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and Kansas State to win the Big 8 tournament. All right, the number 2 seed, Arizona, is there in Salt Lake City. 9th consecutive year that Arizona has received the bid. They will play the 15th seed, Santa Clara Broncos. All right, Friday, Sunday games in Tucson. Number 1 ranked Michigan, the number 1 seed there, that is. They will be playing the 16th seed, Coastal Carolina, led by Tony Slam Duncan, a 4-time Big South Player of the Year. The 8th seed, Iowa State, the senior statesman, Johnny Orr, showing he can still coach, taking on the 9th seed, UCLA Bruins. Jim Herrick just received a 3-year contract on Tuesday. Congratulations, you're in the tournament. New Mexico State has the 5th seed. Dave Bliss's squad will take on a team that is certainly cheering down in the Foggy Bottom in Washington, D.C. George Washington in for the first time in 32 years. The 4th seed goes to Georgia Tech. I tell you, they won the ACC postseason tournament over North Carolina, and Georgia Tech will play the winner of the Southwestern Athletic Conference Championship, right now being played between Jackson State and Southern. All right, now you may be asking, what about teams that had their bubbles burst? UNLV, a major one out, as well as Providence, Houston, Pepperdine, Oklahoma, and Minnesota. And, of course, the teams that are out of the tournament this year certainly will engender an awful lot of conversation. We'll do that with Tom Butters, the chair of the Men's Basketball Selection Committee. But right now, let's take you back to where they certainly will be talking in New York with Jim Nantz.
You better believe it, JB. I can see a lot of people out there with writer's cramp furiously trying to fill in the brackets. We'll be going through them once again a little bit later here in the show. But one more time, I'll look at the number 1 seeds now for the 1993 tournament. North Carolina in the East, Indiana in the Midwest, Kentucky Southeast, Michigan in the West. We stacked them that way because at the Final Four, here's the matchup. Here will be the brackets in New Orleans, Southeast against the West, and the East Midwest champions will meet in New Orleans on April the 3rd. Now, what about conference breakdowns? 6 from the ACC, 6 from the Big 8, 5 from the Big 10, and Bill Raftery, how about that 5 from the Big 10? People thought maybe more, huh?
7. Some people were talking. Clem Haskins must have thrown the pen when he was doing his graphic. That's a team that has to be disappointed.
How about you, Billy? What do you think?
Well, I think the thing that's interesting to me is that the Atlantic 10 with 4, Big East with 3, it looks like a little change of power right there.
The team that really has to be disappointed from the Big East is Providence, huh?
On a roll late in the season. It looks like those postseason tournaments really came back to haunt them a little here.
Providence got the third choice out of the Big East, or did not get the third choice. Pitt got it instead.
And a big win over Arizona too early in the year, and a good finish. Tough for Rick Barnes and company.
All right, gentlemen. When we come back, we're going to hear from the chair of the selection committee out in Kansas City, Tom Butters. Later on, the brackets one more time as we continue on the road to New Orleans here on CBS. For the questions, back out to Kansas City we go. James Brown, take it, please.
All right, Jimmy, thank you very much. And apparently I was moving a little faster here than I ever did on the basketball floor. I mentioned that George Washington will be playing New Mexico State, and indeed it is New Mexico that George Washington will be playing in Tucson. And right now, let's talk with Tom Butters, the chair of the men's basketball selection committee. Did you ever move that fast on the court?
Never that fast. You did a great job.
You know, you talked about how difficult things were day one for you guys, and actually you started to see the light yesterday. Now, teams like UNLV not in there. Providence came down the stretch strong, not in there. What was the decision as far as those squads were concerned?
Well, hard choices. There's no doubt about it. We labored long and hard. I don't think I've ever seen a committee spend so much time on teams that ended up not getting in the tournament. But when you come down to a league like the Big West, where you had the champion, New Mexico State, you had a team, Long Beach, that had beaten UNLV twice. They're playing for the championship. It's simply a case of 2 slots, 3 teams, Long Beach having a chance to play their way in. So they made that decision for us, really.
Okay, and I'm sure the fellows back in New York have quite a few questions for you as well. Let's go back to Jim Nance and the group in New York.
All right, JB. Tom, I'm curious. You look at the brackets, the seedings, the at-large selections with the lowest seeds. George Washington and Marquette are each 12 seeds. Is it fair to say they were the last 2 teams to get into the tournament?
They were among the last teams. Pat, there's no doubt about that.
And what was the final decision to give it to George Washington and Marquette over, say, UNLV, Providence, Minnesota?
Well, you've got a cluster of teams, all of which look very similar. We had put all of those teams through, as you know, what we call the nitty-gritty, and it came out in their favor.
Tom, Billy Packer, obviously you fellas have been really drained. I haven't seen you this quite tired in some time. One of the things that I have to wonder about are postseason conference tournaments, because obviously they weighted heavily on this committee's decision. You look on not only teams that got in and those that were left out, but also seedings. Clubs like LSU that went from bubble to fairly high, Georgia Tech with their great move in the ACC, Temple, and then those out, Duke going down somewhat, a Vegas out completely and a Providence out completely. How much of these postseason tournaments weigh on this decision process the last, let's say, 18 to 20 hours?
Well, obviously they count. I said in a press conference last week that that season-ending games and season-ending tournaments obviously count, and they should. But we had an extenuating circumstance, it seems, this year, because not only was a team winning or losing, there were other teams winning and losing at the same time, and we had what appeared at least to be an inordinate number of surprising losses. I haven't counted those up, but certainly it exacerbated the problem.
Tom, Bill Raftery, I'm just curious. I know Arizona has to be a little disappointed. How did you arrive at that decision not to seed them as a 1?
Well, again, you have to measure what they've done as opposed to what Michigan had done. Strength of schedule. When you look at Michigan, they played one of the most difficult schedules, I thought, in the country, and did well with it. And we certainly would have liked to have had 5 1s, but the point of the matter was we couldn't do that, and we simply came down with Michigan winning out.
Tom, Jim Nance again. There was some discussion that maybe North Carolina would get the 1 seed in the Southeast since the regional is in Charlotte. Instead, they're going to the East, the regional at the Meadowlands. Was that ever discussed by the committee?
I've talked about it, I guess 2 weeks ago, briefly with some of the staff. But we can't change it in midstream, it seems to me. It's always been an East school, and if we changed it this year, then we'd have to fashion it next year or the year after if the same teams were involved with cities that are different. So it seemed to us like it was best to leave it where it was. I'm sorry that's the way it is, but it is the way it is.
All right, Tom Butters, thank you very much. Best of luck to you in the committee. And James Brown, we thank you also out there in Kansas City. The decisions have been made. We'll go one more time through the brackets when we come back on the road to the Final Four on CBS.
You're looking
East on Thursday and Saturday. North Carolina, the 1 seed against East Carolina. Rhode Island, Purdue. St. John's, Texas Tech. Arkansas, Holy Cross.
Well, you look at North Carolina, they may have to play Glenn Robinson, one of the great players in the country, and down the road it might be UNC and Arkansas.
You know, one of the other things about the East, Jimmy, is you see no Big East team is going to be up in Syracuse. You've got St. John's right there in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, St. John's is a 5. The 6 would have gone to Syracuse. That surprised me. What do you think
I can tell you something else. In that 1-16 game, be one of the great crowds of all time, because East Carolina going to bring some people to Winston-Salem. I can tell you that.
All right. Also in the East, at Syracuse. Here's the bracket there. It's Virginia against Manhattan, UMass against Pennsylvania, and New Mexico State, Nebraska, Cincinnati, Coppin State. What do you see there, Bill?
I look at Cincinnati, UMass down the road as it progresses. I mean, UMass, they believe in themselves. They think they're terrific. I mean,
well, they thought they belonged ahead of Kentucky last year, and they've got most of the guys back. I think that would be one of the great physical battles in this tournament, regardless of how it plays out.
What about Manhattan?
Well, Manhattan might surprise some people. Well-rounded team, good inside people, which you need in the tournament.
I still think Cincinnati and UMass are overlooked by many people when they start rattling off their picks to get to the Final Four. What do you think?
Well, unfortunately, they are. They're both talented teams, and defensively, Cincy even would disrupt you in the backcourt.
Billy, no Princeton, but a Pennsylvania team that may be a little underrated.
So that's that UMass Penn.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to see. All right, let's shift now to the Midwest, to Rosemont, the Horizon. DePaul is the host school there, and on Thursday and Saturday, California against LSU, Duke against Southern Illinois, BYU, SMU, Kansas, Ball State. And here's where the two-time champions, Duke Blue Devils, are going. What do you think?
Grant Hill, is he healthy? We'll find out quickly. And down the road, looking ahead, maybe the Cal game. How good is Jason Kidd? And he's going to defensively, Duke gets after you, and they'll certainly be prepared.
Against Hurley would be interesting. And I'll tell you something about this Duke team. I think one of the best things ever happened to them is losing that first round of the ACC tournament. They can finally get healthy to get ready for another run.
And BYU, too. A lot of people don't know much about them. Great passing team and fundamental.
What about SMU getting a bid?
Well, you know, that was a tough league down there. You know, today Houston worked their way right on out of it. I think SMU deserved it. They had finished #1 regular season, Jim.
All right, also in the Midwest, at the Hoosier Dome, Indiana, the #1 seed in the Midwest, against Wright State, New Orleans against Xavier, Oklahoma State to Marquette, and Louisville playing well lately against Delaware. What about Indiana playing there at the Hoosier Dome?
Well, of course, that's been a great blast-off spot for Bobby Knight, and I think that the key there for Indiana really is not that particular game that would excite me, but the thing that is interesting is where is Alan Henderson going to be in the mix? We watched that game today. Obviously didn't get off the bench. They say it's his decision. It's going to be a key if they can go all the way. They've got to have Henderson.
Talk about a crowd. If Xavier advances to the second round, Xavier, Indiana.
Yeah, there's two teams, New Orleans and Xavier, both coming off tough losses in their conference play.
And Louisville, too. And you get nervous when Al McGuire recommends somebody, Billy, but he thinks Louisville's got a shot. Great three-point shooting
He's
team.
speaking there. Come on.
To the other side of the bracket in the Southeast, and this action in Orlando Thursday and Saturday. Kansas State, Tulane, a little surprised maybe at a 6 seed there. Florida State, Evansville, Western Kentucky, Memphis State, and Seton Hall, Tennessee State. I like some teams here. You look at Anthony Hardaway, his team's a 10 seed, and Seton Hall's on a roll.
Yeah, they could have to go up against each other early on. I think this, and I know we're going to argue about this later on maybe, but I think it's the hardest bracket, the Southeast. And you look at all 4 clubs that could work their way out in the seed there, potentially Final Four teams.
Primetime Jim Nance goes for Hardaway right away, but the Hall played great in this tournament.
Yeah, not to overlook Western Kentucky, because they had a great season.
Solid.
I still think the Midwest is the hardest one. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Also in the Southeast, this at Nashville, Kentucky and Rider, Utah and Pitt in the 8-9 game, Wake Forest against Tennessee Chattanooga, and Iowa, Northeast Louisiana. I thought your Wake team might get a little better seed than a 5.
Well, again, we go to postseason conference tournaments. They get knocked out in the first round by Virginia. They drop down from what might have been as high as 3 down to a 5 seed.
I heard they played a lot harder because you were going to give a big donation if they made this tournament. But Kentucky with the threes, the open floor, it's Rick Pitino, the coach.
Yeah, but he doesn't like the court there. He doesn't like the bench on the end line. He can't, he can't walk. Exactly. And doesn't get on camera down in the end either.
All right, let's shift over now to the West. This is Salt Lake City. On Thursday and Saturday, Illinois against Long Beach State. Long Beach State won the Big West Automatic today. Vanderbilt, Boise State, and Temple, Missouri, Arizona against Santa Clara. And I look at the bottom of this bracket. I know you saw Temple this week in the A-10 championship game. Temple, Arizona possible. What do you think?
Lute Olson may get grayer, if that's possible.
What about you?
Well, that's impossible. The zone, the matchup that John Shady has, awful tough to score. That's one of the great games, I think, in that area.
Hey, the Big 8 comes in with 6 teams, and they've got themselves, the Missouri runs right through a very tough postseason conference tournament on a roll right there. That's pretty solid league.
You know, we debated about that 1 seed in the West for the whole week. You liked Arizona to get the nod over Michigan. Why?
I really liked them because I thought that they would give it to a team from that region that had played well and had really been up there. Like Tom said, there were 5 #1 seeds, and who do you throw it to?
All right, now let's move over to Tucson. Here's the last of 8 brackets for the first week. Michigan, Coastal Carolina, Iowa State against UCLA, New Mexico, George Washington, Georgia Tech, against the Jackson State Southern winner, the SWAC tournament going on right now. Georgia Tech, a 4 seed. I know they won the ACC tournament
Go back to the
right?
Yep. Teams go from bubble up to 4 seeds, and Georgia Tech, of course, now they have 2 wins over Duke, a win over North Carolina this year. It's a team probably that's played when it's playing well, as well as anybody in the country. When it's playing bad, look out. Bobby Crimmon's done those white hairs for nothing.
Great starting team, too.
Excellent starting team.
Look ahead, they may play Michigan with one of the great little games, huh?
I'm starting to get a little bit excited. What do you think's the toughest of the 4 brackets?
Well, you know, listening, I put the Midwest #1, Southeast 2, West 3, and East 4. Carolina looks, not that anything is easy in this tournament.
It's true.
But
Billy?
Of course, we got to talk about Phelps' injury also. You know, we talked about Allen Houston, we talked about Grant Hill, we got to talk about Phelps.
I don't want to get carried away with this point, but Knight and Krzyzewski, both in the Midwest, they could meet in the regional final. What do you think?
Well, I think it'll be fun to watch, obviously. 2 teams, of course, the controversy of whether they hit it off anymore or not, but...
well, Bobby beat Mike Krzyzewski's team in that region.
87.
That's right.
The last time they didn't go to the Final Four.
Exactly, and went all the way and won the championship, and Mike didn't go to the Final Four.
All right, Billy. And Bill, March Madness tips off with first-round play on Thursday and Friday, noon Eastern time, 12:15 tip time each day. Our primetime coverage will come your way Thursday and Friday nights, 8 Eastern time. For Bill and Billy, Jim Nance saying, we'll see you Thursday here on CBS.
CBS Sports has presented the NCAA basketball.
And present.
Unveiled the field of 64, talked to a couple of coaches, one in and one out. But right now, let's take a closer look at each of the regions, break down which one we feel will be the toughest. And Dick, clearly the East is not it.
I think the East is the simplest region. I really do. I look at the East right now. I think North Carolina is on its way. I really do. I can't see anybody stopping them there in that region.
They faced East Carolina, a team that's out of the Colonial that was below 500, so that's how they start things out. Now, North Carolina, you know, they have the big man in the middle. But this is a squad that has non-conference wins against Seton Hall, Ohio State, and Houston. They're on a roll as well, despite losing this game in the ACC Championship. They did not have Phelps in that game.
They have to have Phelps back, you know, or be reminiscent of the year that they were #1 in the nation in '84, and Kenny Smith went down, came back, but they were beaten by Indiana. Also, you remember the year that Indiana in '75 was #1, and Scott May they lost, and it was tough for them. They got beat by Kentucky. They got to get Phelps back.
Won 11 of their last 12 games, 2 weeks at #1, and the power rating says they are the #1 team in the country, and I don't think if they're at full strength, there's much question about that.
I think when you look at that region right there, I see North Carolina to me, John. I could be certainly wrong. I've been wrong before, but they look like the class of that region.
All right, let's take a look at the rest of the field and the other teams that will be chasing North Carolina. Games being played at the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, where the #2 seed will be there as well. Cincinnati getting a #2 seed, perhaps a bit of a surprise.
Well, you know, that really doesn't shock me based on their power ratings and on the kind of numbers they have. But the second matchup could be interesting. Could be UMass against Cincinnati in the second round. Could be a heck of a game, just like I think a first-round interesting matchup, New Mexico State against Nebraska. But I think that Cincinnati, to me, Van Exel's certainly outstanding. Their trapping defenses are really excellent, but they don't have the kind of personnel like they had last year when they had Herb Jones and company.
Well, that's the reason why I said surprise, not because they don't deserve that #2, because as well as they've played this year, they certainly do. But you and I have talked about it over the last week or so. It's not as good of a program as it was a year ago.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, John. I don't think that their personnel is as good. Certainly Bobby Huggins gets maximum out of his people. He gets them to play to a super level. And I don't think the Great Midwest this year was as good, for example, as it was last year. I know the rating systems, the RPI, has it rated ahead of, for example, ahead of the Big East, ahead of the SEC. I can't buy it. First of all, only has 6 teams in the conference. That means that you rate them on 10 games versus the other conferences that have to play like 18 games.
UMass went to the Sweet 16 last year, and again, I think we feel the same about them as we do about Cincinnati. It was a better club last year. It was a very good club this year, but a better club last year.
I think they have to get back Michael Williams. The question mark is whether he will be back or not. He suffered an injury about a month ago. The key is whether he can return. I don't think you can win without all of your people, especially a key guy who's an explosive guy in a perimeter like he is.
All right, that's a closer look at the East. Time now for a closer look at the Midwest with the #1 seed, the Indiana Hoosiers. They will face Wright State in the opening round.
Well, you know, right there, Billy Edwards, an outstanding player for Wright State, but Indiana should be able to get by in that game. If they do not have a healthy Alan Henderson, which I do not think they will have, I can't see them going much further than maybe to the round of 8. Maybe they can get there, but I have really a tremendous doubt that they'll be in New Orleans without Alan Henderson.
Marquette, a squad that struggled actually towards the end of the year despite the good run.
Well, they lost in the last 10 games. They lost 5. They were 5-5, but they had the great start, and I think the great Midwest got really a positive result of their high RPI rating to get 3 teams out of their conference.
Indiana is the #1 seed, the regular season champions in the Big Ten, and they have the guy you have said is the player of the year, Calbert Chaney.
Oh, I don't change on that. I think Calbert Chaney this year has been the player of the year. They did a superb job all year long in a very tough conference, but I think they'll miss Henderson in the big game. His shot blocking ability, I remember the Michigan game, he was the difference, blocking shots, rebounding. I think you have to have that guy in the lane. Without him, and he has an ACL problem. He's going to definitely have, they said, postseason surgery. I don't know how effective he can possibly be.
Did not play in the game today against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin actually came back strong in that one, but you saw the reasons why. They certainly are a #1 seed. Without them, they are not the top team, just like North Carolina without Phelps is not the #1 team.
Well, injuries are so really important right now and really play a major role. I mean, Phelps now not in the lineup for North Carolina. That changes the total complexion. You've seen it today against Georgia Tech. They were a different team than the team we had watched earlier this year. And certainly Alan Henderson. They've been able to win, though, and I certainly have to credit the General Robert Montgomery Knight and that team for responding to the challenge of playing without Alan, because the only slip they had was on the road to Ohio State, who really got on fire at the end of the year, and today beat Purdue.
All right, a look at the rest of the Midwest. Games being played in Chicago, Rosemont Horizon. And very interesting look here, because Duke could be on a collision course with Kansas, and then the winner of that game could be on a collision course with Indiana. Very interesting.
That would be a really interesting matchup. But you know, first-round game that really could be exciting? Kansas and Ball State. Remember the Mid-American Conference. Last year, they challenged North Carolina. The year before, they went to the Sweet 16 with Eastern Michigan. The year before that, Ball State went to the Sweet 16 and gave a big scare to the national champs, UNLV. Ball State can cause some problems if Kansas does not return to its game that they played earlier this year, their great motion, and getting Walters and Jordan to really excel.
You really have to look at California and congratulate their program as well. I mean, neither one of us liked what they did to Coach Campanelli there, but Todd Bozeman has done a tremendous job, winning 9 of 10 and to get a 6th seed.
Well, John, I think there's no question that Bozeman, Todd, deserves the head coaching job. He's got that team to respond to him. They seem to have chemistry. They're playing well. I didn't like what Baccarat did. I don't like it till this day. I thought it was Bush never giving Luke Campanelli a chance to even hear him out. But basically, to me, Bozeman's done a great job. But a very young team. They've been a team that's been able to beat, for example, Oklahoma State. They beat Wake Forest, but then they lost to Cornell by 20. I know Jason Kidd didn't play in that game, but they also lost to James Madison. Little up and down.
James Madison, another time for lefty to be on the other side looking in again. The tournament special continues in just a moment. When we come back, we'll move it to the West and find out what we feel about that bracket. Stay with us. Plenty more to come. Tech does not know who they will play in the first round. It will be the SWAC champion, either Southern or Jackson State. You can see the second half of that game here on ESPN following this tournament selection special. So let's check in right now into first half action.
We welcome everybody to the Riverside Centraplex in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the Southwestern Athletic Conference title between the #1 seed, that's Jackson State, and the #3 seed, Southern. This is going to be an offensive matchup, my friends. 29-25 the score now. The #1 seed Jackson State on top. They jumped up 10-0 right off the bat because of Lindsey Hunter, who scored 10 points, Paul Sunderland, in the first minute 12.
I'll tell you, and off the bat is no exaggeration. 3 3-point shots, all from NBA distance. The list of NBA scouts that are sitting courtside is about 15 deep. But Southern got back in this basketball game by continually running the ball right at Jackson State. and then pounding the offensive glass, got multiple rebound opportunities, and Leonard White for Southern University has been exceptional as well.
Hunter takes a breather, his first of the afternoon. He's got 14. Travis King nails him, and so it's a 2-point game. Southern got back with that matchup zone. Now they're back to the man-to-man. We've seen a couple of switches from both sides defensively, but it's offense that's been the story, and there's another top offensive play. That's Ryan Lorthridge, who puts in his 5th point of the night.
I tell you, where has Ryan Lorthridge been all season long? A consistent player for Jackson State, that indeed, but Lindsey Hunter getting the ball so much. But in a tournament and in a game of this importance, you need some balance because they're going to take a scorer like Hunter out of the mix.
This is Darius Mims who comes back in. Vincent Jones just came in for a couple of minutes to spell the starter Mims. He's got 3 points in the game. And there is Ben Jobe, his 21st year in coaching, 20th on the all-time wins list. 420 victories over the years. So a 5-point lead now. Southern goes to work on that. Leonard White couldn't handle that one. So 32-27 our score, 6:46 to go in the first half. Let's go back to John Saunders in the studio.
All right, gentlemen, thanks a lot. We will join you for the second half of that game in its entirety. Southern or Jackson State will face Georgia Tech in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. Let's take a closer look right now at the West, where Michigan, out of the Big Ten, is shipped as a #1 seed, something without question they deserve.
Yeah, they really did, John. They had a phenomenal year all year. I think they were bored during the end of the season. I think Chris Webber and company are going to be ready to explode. Jalen Rose with a little reverse layup. Jalen and company, I think, can't wait for the postseason. And you better believe they're capable of stringing 6 in a row.
Well, they proved that last year when they won 5 in a row and just came up short in the championship game against Duke.
Juwan Howard, really an improved player, very emotional player as well.
You see who they beat in non-conference. North Carolina, Kansas, and Nebraska. Big 8 did not impress them, obviously. 7-game winning streak. 3 weeks at #1. They had that a couple of times. And they are ranked as the #3 team in the country, according to RPI. A look at the rest of the West right now, being played at the Huntsman Center, where the #2 seed will be Arizona.
Arizona certainly had a great year out in the Pac-10. They really did have a super season. They did a phenomenal job. Chris Mills, to me, certainly should be the player of the year when you talk about that conference. But basically, I don't think that they deserve the #1 seed over Michigan.
Okay, we were looking again at the first side of the draw that had the #1 seed Michigan in it, but Arizona, again, you don't believe they have a beef. I agree with you. They got knocked off late in the season, and that's what hurt them.
Yeah, California beat them late in the year, and they had a great year. I mean, nobody could deny the fact that Arizona certainly has a super team. Key player for Arizona, if they're going to make that run, is the big guy in the middle. Will the real Ed Stokes, the big fella, will he give them a consistent performance day in and day out? If he does, they can create a lot of problems. Their little guard really has improved, Stoudemire.
Here's the other side of the bracket in the Huntsman Center in Salt Lake City. You like Illinois coming out of here. I personally like Temple. They played such a tough schedule this year, and we saw it in the Atlantic 10 tournament that this is a team that is ready to play at tournament level.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. They're going to get great experience in this tournament, but John Chaney, who really, you got to start looking at his numbers eventually as a Hall of Famer. I mean, an amazing job he's done there in the Atlantic 10. Next year, John Chaney's team's going to be super. He's got some guys sitting out. He's got a whole bunch of players returning. They're going to be outstanding next season. This year, maybe win a round, but I like Illinois as my sleeper. And remember this, you can't pick a sleeper unless they're a team beyond the top 4 seeds. I don't want to hear people say, Seton Hall is my sleeper pick.
No, but I'm going to take you back to last year.
Oh, wait a minute.
When we made the rules and told you that you couldn't do that because you were trying to pick Duke as your sleeper, I think it was.
Yeah, Jimmy jumped all over me. I'll tell you, I wish, Jimmy, you were here with us, big fella. Yeah, we love you dearly.
We definitely miss Jim Valvano, but we know he's watching, yes. Guys. So follow with us, Jim, because we're going to go on now to the next region in the Southeast, I believe it is. Yes, Nashville, Tennessee, Kentucky is the #1 seed there. Winners in the SEC. And Rick Pitino, he came up short last year just because of a Christian Laettner jumper, but this year he can win it all.
Well, you know, he has the potential to win it all. Kentucky has to get some performance out of Roderick Rhodes. You know, Mashburn's certainly the superstar and a candidate for Player of the Year, candidate to be a #1 player in the draft. But they got to get Roderick Rhodes to return to his form if they're going to be able to beat the kind of people they have to beat. There's Roderick taking it to the goal.
see the non-conference wins. Indiana, Louisville, and Georgia Tech. They won 6 in a row. They were a #1 team. But as we looked at that half of the bracket, I bring up Pitt, and the reason, because Providence from the Big East, only 3 teams made it from the Big East. Providence certainly would have a beef that they should be there instead of Pitt.
I think 3 teams could absolutely sit there, toss and turn tonight. They will not sleep, and they have a right to feel that way. Providence wins 7 of their last 8 games. They play unbelievable. They split with Pittsburgh. Talk about the Friars. You can talk about Oklahoma. They certainly, when you look at the quality of people they played, they beat the University of Massachusetts, played Duke to overtime. They're in one of the top conferences in America. And UNLV, I know they really, at the end, really slipped a little bit, but UNLV, certainly, I know Rolly Massimino right now could say, gee, all year long, we're like a top 20 team in America, and now we don't even make the dance. The reason Long Beach State winning that tournament.
Yeah, Long Beach State knocking them out in the semifinal, then going on and winning it all and getting the automatic berth. That's what knocked Vegas out of there. All right, now look at the rest of the bracket, the Southeast. Orlando Arena. Kansas State, they went to the final in the Big 8. They'll face Tulane. Tulane's fortunes have slipped a little bit.
They really have slipped a little bit. Perry Clark's team, you know, at the end really was not playing as well as they did early. Interesting matchup there, though, in that first round. They're pretty even, those 2 clubs. Florida State, though, really interesting, as we talked earlier. They certainly could create some noise. Western Kentucky can be a real sleeper out of that region. They have talent. I remember Rick Pitino telling me on the phone, he said, Dick, watch out for Western Kentucky. They beat Louisville at Louisville after Louisville broke the 59-game win streak at home of the running Rebels. So this club's got some players down there at Western Kentucky, and they beat New Orleans.
So if you're P.J. Carlesimo right now, you're looking at either Memphis State or Western Kentucky in the second round. That's a tough one.
Well, if you're P.J. Carlesimo right now, he's saying John Saunders, Dick Vitale. We're not looking at a second round, baby. We're looking at round 1 because we don't get by that. He said, I'm sitting home and maybe the students will chat. Yeah, it's an amazing story that I'm thinking here. They were after P.J. Carlesimo's job only about 2-3 years ago, and today he's one of the giants. I mean, one of the giants in coaching.
Well, the year before that they went to the championship game, the students in the
1988
newspaper wanted to run him out of there. The next year, he comes so close. Ramil Robinson in the free throws, all that separated him from winning the national championship. We'll be back with more in just a moment, but let's take a look at bids by conference. The ACC and the Big 8 with 6 apiece.
The 34.
King Welch's scoreboard here. Meg Mallon is at 14 under 11 today, rather, on the 11th hole on this final round. Senior PGA advantage. Start was delayed an hour because of frost. The weather's played havoc all up and down the country. J.C. Snead at 2 under has a 1-stroke lead. A couple of games in the NBA. The Chicago Bulls beaten by the Pistons, 101-99. Michael Jordan did have 28 points, 6 assists. Joe Dumars, though, with 27 points. Terry Mills with 23 points as he returns home. The L.A. Clippers over Minnesota, 124-107. Ron Harper with 25 points. Doug West had 28 for Minnesota. In the National Hockey League, the Winnipeg Jets beat Tampa Bay 3-1. Teemu Selanne, the first NHL rookie to score 60 goals in a season. Chicago beats Edmonton 5-4 as the final in overtime. Jeremy Roenick had 2 goals there. The Islanders have a lead over Pittsburgh. 2-1 is that score. Rick Tocchet has scored for Pittsburgh. Volek has won for the Islanders. Detroit over San Jose 4-1. That one is a final, and a couple of games postponed. Again, bad weather on the East Coast. Philadelphia at Hartford, they'll make that one up. Los Angeles and Buffalo as well. When we come back, we will get back to our look at the field of 64. Michigan, their #1 seed. Kentucky as well. The selection special continues.
Why do people really like Toyota Paseo? Take this home lie detector test. I like Paseo because A, it's practical, has a driver's side airbag, or B, women dig it. A, it has 100 horsepower performance, or B, women dig it. A, Paseo starts under $11,800, or B, women dig it. Paseo, a very practical car from Toyota.
sport, we feel for the shoes. K-Swiss, crafted with passion.
Recently, 1 million cases of Diet Pepsi were sent free to loyal Diet Coke drinkers.
I wonder if some of them are singing a different tune now. It's got a hold on me, right in the soul of me. I'm a changed man. This is the right one, baby. Uh-huh.
It makes you wonder, what would happen if everyone tried Diet Pepsi?
No comment, baby. No doubt about it. Only one taste is the right one. Makes me feel like singing. You got the right one, baby! Uh-huh.
The best defense is not to offend. Thus, introducing the new Right Guard Sports Stick. Now with a time-release formula for longer-lasting protection against hostile odor all day. For protection that endures.
Tuesday night, time is running out and playoff positions are up for grabs. Eric Lindros leads the Flyers' attack against the Minnesota North Stars. Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern, live on ESPN National Hockey Night.